Hello, everyone. Welcome back for the third talk of the day. Now we're going to be listening to Alex from ZenCoder, and he's going to be talking about going beyond Copilot with AI agents. Please give him a round of applause as he starts his presentation.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Alex. I'm head of ML and DevOps at ZenCoder AI. Thank you all for coming today to my talk about going beyond Copilot with the AI agents. Now, before we dive deeper into agentic world, I'd like to get to know you a bit better. Can I get a show of hands from people who use any coding assistants right now? Okay, quite a lot of you. And who here uses anything other than Copilot or ChatGPT? Okay, it looks like most of you are using GitHub Copilot. Okay, I got it. So I guess the talk will be quite interesting for you and hopefully eye-opening. But let's first talk about current state of the coding assistants and what they offer. So depending on the company, depending on the product, you might get a different set of features. But in general, they still sort of fall into 4 main categories. So you usually get code generation. You get code generation from scratch, from zero. And this usually comes in 2 flavors. So it can be either code generation from some sort of natural language request. Right, so you type something like generate me a Fibonacci sequence, and then you get you hopefully get the correct code based on your request. It can also be in the flavor of code completion, where you start typing something, and you get an autocomplete sequence for you. Again, hopefully correct one. You usually also get some sort of code editing capabilities. It could be some sort of code refactoring or maybe code optimizations. And usually you also have a chance to give some sort of natural language request on top of that. So like optimize my function or use that or this and so on. Some code assistants also offer error detection. So it can be something simple, like you have some sort of typing error, or it can go up to something more complicated, like some sort of security vulnerabilities and so on. And usually they also offer you some way to remedy those errors. And last but not least is something which is not directly tied to code itself, but rather natural language text, like docstring generation or some sort of documentation. So anything which sort of documents your code. And all of this is designed for you to work smarter, to work faster. And all of this sounds great, right? So you sort of just tap, and you get a lot of lines of code, and hopefully it's correct and works and so on. Now, unfortunately, the reality is not so great. So there were several studies on how Copilot and similar coding assistants affected the quality of the code base and perception of how developers feel about themselves, about the code they produce. And there are certainly some pros on using Copilot. But still, there are also some cons about using Copilot or similar coding assistants. People reported that they feel more confident, which is, I guess, great, which is nice. And people feel like they completed tasks faster. They felt they were more productive on using GitHub Copilot and similar coding assistants. Unfortunately, if you look at the longer scale, on the longer time period, we will notice that there is a huge increase in the rates of code renewal or even code rotation or code churn. So basically, percent of lines which is either removed or completely rewritten in the time frame of auto weeks or greater. And also code completions, which were accepted by developers. So in like 30% of the cases, they required subsequent modifications, which also affects sort of the time you need to spend on the task. Now, why is that? A lot of people here are probably working with the data, so you probably know that code assistants usually work based on LLMs or large language models, and LLMs are usually trained on large corpus of open source data. And LLMs are trained also to predict the most probable next symbol. Now, while you're working on something that is sort of While you type in something that's probable to get based on the data, you're fine, right? So let's say you start typing CLA. The most probable next token would be SS because, well, class is pretty much common word in Python, right? Now, let's imagine another situation. Let's say you work in the company, and the company has some sort of internal framework for unit testing or whatever else, right? And LLM has no idea whatsoever about those internal frameworks. Now, when you try to start using Code Assistant based on this framework, you will get predictions, again, based on the data which LLM's seen, which obviously doesn't contain any information about your internal framework. So they will pretty much fail miserably on the task. And you won't be able to use any predictions, any generations from coding system whatsoever when you want to try them on your internal data, on your internal repositories. So that's basically affects not just small LLMs, it also affects even the latest and greatest LLMs, like O1 from ChatGPT. They're still prone to a lot of hallucinations, especially if you start talking about something which is not known by, which is not available on the open source data, which is not available to LLM beforehand. Right? It just takes a bit longer, but still it tends to hallucinate. Okay, but hallucinations is not the only thing where LLMs fail. And the reasons for that are that LLMs also are not grounded in the physical world. And what I mean by that in terms of coding specifically is that they don't have any idea about your environment. Right? So obviously, of course, you can spend some time on providing some information about, let's say, I'm using PyTest and not unit test, or I'm using that library, not this library, and you can sort of kind of condition a LLM to generate a code based on some sort of preliminary information. But again, if you're talking about some sort of large company or even a small company, you usually have some sort of internal libraries, and you won't probably be able to copy paste all the code there for LLM to use. And even if you would be able to do that, LLMs, because LLMs tends to hallucinate, still it won't be able to kind of detect that it hallucinated, even because it can't execute the code, right? On top of that, LLMs also tends to struggle with some logical reasoning and some phrases which might sound fine for human ear, like Tom Cruise is the mother's son, will confuse the hell out of LLM, and it won't be able to derive any conclusions based on that. And as I said, they work well in distribution, but once you go outside of distribution, once you start using your internal framework, so something which is not so popular in open source, right? So maybe even a new framework which came out after LLM was trained on the data, you kind of fall out of the distribution, and you are, well, doomed to not accept any, not to get any valuable result from LLMs. Now, enough about LLMs for now. Now let's look at how you, as developer, spend your time. Right? So it actually there was a study almost already 10 years ago where they looked on what developers spend their time on. And interestingly, most of the time are spent not on writing the code, but it is spent on understanding the code. It's spent outside of IDE. It's spent on UI interaction, and so on. And current coding assistants essentially focus only on the 5% of the time which you spend during your work, right? So there is nothing about understanding. There is nothing about being outside IDE. Like I don't know, maybe you're doing web search in the Stack Overflow, in Perplexity, or whatever, right? Or maybe you're just using some sort of tool, like the backend tool, outside of IDE or inside IDE. Current coding assistants, they have no knowledge about this, and they pretty much ignore 95% of the time you are spending on your work. So what we can do about this? So let's talk about AI agents. Now, AI agents you can define as a software which runs or which basically tasked to do what you tell it to do, right? And it kind of sounds like code assistants. They pretty much do also they do some tasks which you ask them to do. But unlike coding assistants, AI agents follow several principles, several design patterns, if you will, and I will talk about them in a second. But there was a nice comparison of AI agents in the recent blog post from GitHub. So if you think about Roomba, right? If you think about robot vacuum cleaner, it would be kind of annoying and not so helpful if this robot would only point you to any dirt spot on the floor, and that wouldn't clean anything, right? It would just go around, hey, this is dirt, but it won't do anything about this. It's kind of annoying, not so helpful, and yeah, not so good. So from this analogy, you can already kind of guess what kind of patterns or design principles AI agents follow. And we start with the tool use. So if you think about Roomba, it has these sort of wheels, it has these brushes and so on, which helps it to clean the floor, right? And in case of coding, in case of development, it can be either some sort of web search, it can be use of the back tools and so on. Then there is planning. So again, Roomba that don't just randomly go around the floor. It kind of plans its route, so that the clean surface is optimized. And in terms of coding, again, we don't just start randomly typing something. We usually first plan ahead, and it's not only in the sense of agile planning. It can also be some sort of subconscious plan. Okay, to get this task, I will do first this and that and so on. Right? There is also reflection. We all work with some colleagues, with our peers, and we can talk with them. We can discuss some ideas. We can reflect on them, and based on this interaction, we can come up with a better plan, with better ideas, and so on. And then again, I just talked about peers. There is also a notion of multi-agent collaboration, where agents or people can collaborate with each other to come up with a better solution. And this, again, with the agents, different agents can collaborate with each other. For example, let's say you have an agent which is sort of backend developer and an agent which is front-end developer, and they can interact with each other to come up with the best plan to, I don't know, develop a website or whatever you would ask them to do. And then based on this collaboration, they come up with a better plan, and then they use some tools to get there. Now, if we again look at this diagram and how people spend time on the work, we can kind of overlap with the previous slide with these patterns. So, for example, tool use. Right, so you use your tools during the editing, obviously, but you also use your tools outside of ID. You do web searches, you do some UI interactions, and so on. The same goes with the planning. To do the planning, you need to understand the code. You need to obviously navigate through the code, and so on. You might also need to spend some time outside of IDE. Probably you might need to do some, again, web search to better understand the code, and so on. Reflection, right? So you also need to understand. You need to have some understanding to make any reflections on the code itself. And the same goes for the multi-agent collaboration. Pretty much everything we do with our colleagues, right? We interact with each other, and we collaborate, and we come up with the better ideas, with the better solutions. So we already are kind of agents, right? And to get the better help from coding assistants, we need to have them be able to help on each of those steps, not just at code editing, but also with understanding, planning, UI interactions, and so on. So how can you incorporate AI agents in your daily life already today? Right, so there are some open source tools which you can use. Like, for example, there is OpenDiving, there is OpenGPT, which are available on the GitHub. They have a lot of stars. You can try them already today. Where you can define your own agents, which will do something for you. But if you don't want to spend a lot of time on that, on defining your own agents, you can try better coding assistant called Zencoder. And as you could guess, I am from Zencoder. Right, so at Zencoder, we already predefine a lot of agents for you, and we use those agents to give you much better quality of generations, much better help during your everyday life. And this can be demonstrated using this simple sort of comparison. So if you think about the current state of the coding assistance, right? So it can be compared to you just picking randomly some developer on the street, or maybe not even developer, some person on the street, and asking them to write a code, to write a task, to solve a task for you, right? And you don't give them any clues about what the task is, what what the code base is, and so on. So it kind of feels for them like they see the code repository for the first time. They don't know anything about your internal repositories, about your practices, and so on. So they maybe will provide you with some decent implementation, maybe not, probably not. Or even if they do, you will need still to spend some time on rewriting this implementation, to use your own libraries, use your internal practices, and so on. And obviously, you will spend a lot of time on this as well. Now, once you get a new task, you pick yet another random person on the street, and you ask them again to do pretty much the same. Again, they don't have no knowledge about your internal libraries, about your internal practices, and you repeat this process over and over, sort of like a 51st dates, right, situation where the assistant doesn't have a clue about what's going on. It just sees something, just sees your request, and it tries to help you, but it can't be just because it's limited in its understanding of the context. Now, at Zencoder we built on top of two main concepts. First is repo grokking, and I won't be going into repo grokking in details today, but if you want to know more, you can go to our booth, and you can find me. I'm pretty noticeable based on the color of my t-shirts, right? And our booth is over there near the booking and Snowflake. You can ask some questions there, and we can go through all the details if you are interested. Now, we collect a lot of intelligent context for your specific request, for your specific task, which already helps LLM greatly to reduce hallucinations, to provide better results. But we don't stop there. We don't just generate the code for you. We use what we call agentic repair pipeline, or agentic improvement on that slide, which basically tries to use that generated code and try to run it, try to compile it, try to do some checks on it. And on each step, we try to fix any errors which might rise. So essentially, we are just doing your job for you for debugging, for fixing errors, for optimizing the code. And we do that in the background, so you don't need to spend time on that. So in the end, you essentially just get the best quality of the code possible, and hopefully you are happy with it. You can just commit and push it right away. Now, let's have a quick demo over here. So as I said, we already defined some agents for you in the plugin. And Zencoder is available both at VS Code and JetBrains as a plugin, which you can install through Marketplace. So we have, for example, a unit test generation agent. And unlike Copilot, so if you ask Copilot to generate a unit test for you, it will start streaming the code right away. Right? It won't take into account anything you have in your, for example, dependencies. It won't take into account framework which you use. So maybe use PyTest, or maybe even use any other framework. Right? It probably won't know anything about that. Now, in our case, we can interact with your environment, and we can understand your environment to see which kind of frameworks you use, which kind of dependencies you have. And we also don't just generate a code. We first start with a test plan. So we define what we want to test. And you can also edit or add your own test cases if you want to test something specific in your function or in your code. And again, once you hit start generation, again, we don't just generate the code. So current code assistance usually stop here on the creating unit test code. And you can see that you would get the streaming of the code right away. In our case, we don't do that. We first, obviously, we generate the code, but then we do all the checks on top of that. Like you can see, there is a whole pipeline of things we try to do with the code. We try to do the syntax checks, we try to run it, and each step, we try to fix the code. Why does it keep restarting? Sorry. Yeah, so the idea is that the code you get in the end is pretty much the code you can commit and push right away. You don't need to spend any time on debugging it. You don't need to spend time on rewriting it, optimizing it, tailoring to your specific repository, because we already take into account what framework you use for testing, for example, or what kind of dependencies you have. And yeah, let's hit accept, and that's it. OK. But this is not the only agent which we have, of course. We also have, for example, what we call code improve. And this is where you can pretty much define what our agent will do for you. So in this case, again, I have the same file. And I have this function called extract claims from JWT. And I can ask the encoder to essentially write this function using using JWT library. Now, the encoder will essentially just take a look at the code. It will, again, we don't stream the code. We first try to do all the checks. And as you can see, in this case, it essentially just rewritten the function using a single line of code, using the library, and we removed all the unnecessary imports. We fixed the code for you. And all these repair pipelines, repair agents, you don't need to define. We already defined this for you. And in the future, you will also be able to define your own custom agents for you to use. So essentially, you can define your own custom agents, which, for example, converts all the code from Python 2 to Python 3, and you just predefine it, and then you will be able to use it throughout your whole code base, or even share with your colleagues to use. Or it can be something like, OK, switch from this version of library to this version of library, and again, you can share it with your, you will be able to share those custom agents with your colleagues, with your teammates, or even beyond. So we are still in the closed beta. We will go public pretty soon, in the end of October. Until then, you can join our waitlist through this QR code, or you can also stop by our booth. And I will make sure you get an invite already today. And until the end of October, it's completely free for you. You won't need to pay anything. You don't need to bring any API keys or whatever. It's completely free for you. You can try it out. We are happy for you for any feedback from you, any questions. We have communities on Slack and Discord where you can ask questions. So hopefully you will like it, and hopefully it will be able to boost your productivity much better than Copilot and other code assistants which don't use, which don't have any knowledge of your environment. And that's all from me for today, and I will be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Alex. It's just a matter of time before we get all replaced by AI agent, I see. But do we have any question from the audience?
Yeah, have one. Thank you for a great talk. Can you share your experience about built-in agents that will help with using external APIs, for example, by reading the Swagger documentation or even the official human-readable documentation? Do you have some, or you have experience in building such kind of? Thanks.
Yep. Thanks for the question. So currently, you can attach any documentation you want to the chat, for example, as a separate context. So I don't think I have this on the video itself, but I can show, again, I can give you a demo on the booth. And we do plan to extend the context beyond just a simple code base. We want you to be able to add, for example, Jira tickets, want you to be able to add Confluence, any external documentation which you might have, or external repositories as a context, so that the encoder could be aware of any external libraries, internal documentation, or external documentation as well. And this is on our roadmap, and this will be available pretty soon.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. Yeah, very interesting topic. Definitely think agentic systems will help improve, and there's a lot of potential there. I do feel like you seem to say that Copilot does not do the understanding part, but have you heard of Copilot Chat? Because that's like, I think, the feature I use the most of Copilot, and I would definitely see the main use of that is to ask it, look, this is my code. Can you explain to me, like, or this is the code I got from our repository from project. Can you explain to me what was the intention of it? So I feel like without agents, you can already do the understanding. Of course, agents can improve it, but I feel like this is a bit, yeah. Have you heard of Copilot Chat, and can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah. So we actually also do the chat feature. It wasn't on the video, but we do have a separate chat where you can talk with LLM and about your code or in programming in general. The problem with Copilot, again, it doesn't see the context of your whole repository. So certainly you can copy the piece of the code, right, in the chat and ask anything about those questions. But once you want to ask anything about your repository as a general, right, it's sort of limited to what is open in the current tabs. I'm not understanding this.
Yeah, so in the newest versions of Copilot, you can have a drop-down where you can select files you want to feed to Copilot. So it is a bit different than what you're trying to provide, where like it can maybe explore your code base and find files that it cannot do.
Yeah.
But you can provide it more than just what's open. You can add files in the latest versions.
Yeah, okay, but see, you still need to know where this information is stored in which file, right? So you still kind of need to do that, exploration for you. But in our case, we find all necessary bits of information in the repository for you, essentially, and find all the necessary files and answer the questions based on that.
Thanks for the talk. I'm a test-driven development person. How is your AI service supporting my style of writing? So you just presented, okay, we have already a function there defined, write unit tests for me, but what can I do, or how does your AI service support me when I want to write it the reverse way? So first write the test, then the code.
All right. Yeah, so we actually talked a lot with people about unit testing and TDD in particular. It's actually a topic of a hot debate, even inside the company, right? And we've heard a lot of people who like TDD, a lot of people who don't use TDD, and it's a sort of controversial topic, I guess, in a sense. So right now, we generate tests based on the code. But if you want to do the opposite, you can do that now from chat. But I also would be happy to talk with you about your experience on the booth. If you want to share your experience and your opinion, we're always happy for any feedback, and anything you can share, we'll be happy to incorporate.
Hi. I'm curious about context that you pass to your agents. I understand the benefit of the context from your own code base, so that you know the functions and the classes and how you're using everything. But what about the context of dependencies? Do you pull that from the web, some package that you want to use? You gave the example of using JWT to solve some problem. But what about new dependencies? Do you go fetch that live from the web, or is that part of the training data of the LLM? Yeah, so if you can just discuss these topics, thanks.
Yes. Yeah, thank you for the question. So right now we view dependencies as sort of list of libraries, kinda, right? So we don't go deeper than that. We do plan to extend the analysis of the dependencies even further. For example, to be able for you to attach, NumPy documentation as a separate context, and this I think also mentioned that you would be able to add external documentation and so on as a context. This is certainly an important feature, which should be helpful also for you to get better code generation, better answers. And we do plan to add this as part of our development of the product. Right? It should be available in the next several months. You would be able to add whatever documentation you have, and for open source libraries, we probably will also have an option to pre-select whatever you have.
Thank you. We still have 5 minutes for the question.
Hey, thank you. You said 70% is understanding, let's say. But I missed the design part in that. I mean, if you have design or questions or requirements, that would be an excellent way of prompting, I think. And if you have an agent that does design with you to create the best prompt for generation, then you might not need so much coding, in the sense that you just give the requirements and the right prompt of design choices. I mean, what is your design agent doing, or are you building it?
Okay, so by design, do you mean like design of the architecture, or do you mean UI design?
Well, let's say in terms of code, it could be what paradigm or what modularization or what separation of concern or yeah, that kind of stuff.
Okay, got it. Yes, so right now you can ask such questions in the chat. Right, and because we have an understanding of the whole repository, we can help you with any questions related to design or architecture of the code of the repository. We do want to extend this to a separate agent about which is sort of about refactoring the code or making it sure that it complies with the best practices. And give you any suggestions, any recommendations on how to improve it, how to better optimize it, and maybe decouple some classes and so on. This is also in the roadmap, and we should deliver that pretty soon as a separate feature. But again, for now, you can do that pretty much in the chat.
Hey, thanks for the talk. We heard a lot about how important context is. I feel like one of the limitations of LLMs is that the context usually resets in a relatively short time frame. So usually if you have a conversation with GPT today, then it will not know what you said yesterday. Do you have any plans to sort of bring more permanence into how you build the context, or do you already do something like this?
Yes, so we actually already implementing the thing which we call chat memory, which will be able to remember what you talked about in your chat, what you used, and so on. It is I already tried it in the dev build. It's not yet in the production, but it works pretty much like if you use ChatGPT, it has also the notion of memory, which tries to remember what you talked about, what it knows about the user, and leverage that to give you a better understanding. So in my case, for example, I asked our chat, I asked the encoder how do I install PostgreSQL on Mac, and then it suggested Brew. I said that I don't have Brew. So next time I asked the same question, it remembered that I don't have Brew, so it suggested something else. So yeah, basically this should be available for you probably in the span of 2 weeks.
Thank you. We have room for one more question. I see one here.
Hi, thanks for your talk. I have a question regarding IP. So most tools like Copilot, Tab9 or equivalents, they all send data to the server, and for most companies it's not acceptable to send their code to the server. So can you talk a little bit about the client-server model in this case?
Okay, yes, so currently everything goes through our cloud. In terms of models, we use a mix of third-party providers and our own models. In terms of intellectual property, you can actually read more in terms of services on the website, but I can tell you that on the paid plans, we don't train on your data, and we don't store your data anywhere on our servers. So you don't have to worry about this. Now, I know that some companies, some people might not want to even send the data anywhere outside of their premise, and we do plan to extend, to give you an ability to self-host. Right, but that would be in the future. One thing that we probably won't be supporting is using the models on device, just for the simple fact because you probably won't be able to run on device a Llama 405B, for example, right? Because it will require a lot of computation power, and we want to get the best quality product for you, but the best quality generation, which you can't get with the smaller models, which you can run on device. So for now, we do plan to stick only to the cloud, and we will give you an option to self-host in the future. But again, as I said, we don't train on the data on the paid plans, and you can also read more on the terms of services on the website, or you can stop by our booth if you want to have more details on this.
Thanks a lot, Alex. Please make a last applause for him.
Thank you.
And we can find you at the booth, right? Next to Booking and Snowflakes for more questions.